Welcome everyone to the latest installment of our Chamber Chat series. My name is Justin Furrow. I am the chair of the Public Policy Committee of the Chamber. As has been practiced in our Chamber Chat series, we've tried to have elected officials or those who are seeking to be elected officials on here to tell us a little bit about who they are, why they're running, or their platform, their policy priorities. We are delighted today to have Chattanooga mayoral candidate Tim Kelly with us. Tim, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. On behalf of the chamber, really appreciate you running and dedicating your time to try to make the city better and to be with us and speak to our membership today. And, as I explained before we got on here, Tim, what we're going to do is I would like you to tell a little bit about your background and tell us why you're running for mayor. I've got a list of questions that I'm going to go through, and then we'll wrap up at the end. So let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about why you want to be the mayor of Chattanooga.
Well, thank you. And thanks to everybody that's watching. And so I grew up here in Chattanooga, went off to college at Columbia in New York, which was a significant eye-opener for me. I was a John Jay Scholar there. I was lucky to have that honor. Didn't study business, oddly enough, studied comparative literature, but came back to Chattanooga in 1989 in order to join the family business, which at that time was Kelly Cadillac. And I picked up Subaru as my sort of project when I came back from school to help my dad out. Don't have any aunts or uncles. There was nobody else to run it. So I came back to Chattanooga really reluctantly, honestly. It was about the time that Chattanooga had announced it was going to build the aquarium. And Chattanooga at the time was not the kind of city that you were really excited about coming back to. Many of my friends from Columbia thought I was insane. But, Chattanooga's been on an interesting journey since then. In the subsequent 30 years, I've built many other businesses in Chattanooga. I'm an entrepreneur and a small business owner. Went back to graduate school and got my MBA at Emory down in Atlanta after the 2008 recession, in which we lost our General Motors stores, which turns out to have been a blessing in disguise. But I also spent that 30 years in the nonprofit world. So I went through Leadership Chattanooga in 1991. I have yet to find anybody that did it earlier than that. I think that was only the second or third year. And in my service, at the Community Foundation, where I was the chairman a couple of years ago during a time of great transition, it hit me that we really hadn't made enough progress in those 30 years. And look, I don't have any future political ambitions. In some ways, I'm a throwback to kind of the Kinsey Corker model of a business guy who just sees the inefficiencies here and wants to fix it. And I think the value of a small business person in an executive political role isn't necessarily we understand business better. I mean, I've been on the chamber board twice, both times on exec, and I understand the challenges of the chamber and business development and recruitment here in Chattanooga. And so business people love the fact that I'm a business guy, but I think the value in an executive political role is that we understand organizational management better. All business really is, in my mind, is building functional teams with limited time and limited resources to get things done. And the city is the 9th largest employer in the region with almost 2,600 employees. And I think it certainly could be run and managed better to serve the citizens of Chattanooga better. And I know the chamber could use a better partner in the mayor's office. And so that's what I'm here to do.
Well, thanks for that. So my first question relates to the Chattanooga area. We know that the Chattanooga airport has been vital to our region. The success of our region has been hit pretty hard by the pandemic, as has the travel industry on the whole. But if you were elected mayor, what do you believe that the city of Chattanooga can do to help expand air service at the Chattanooga airport?
Justin, it's funny. When I went through Leadership Chattanooga back in 1991, the number one and number two issues here were public education and air service. And again, it's exactly to my previous point. 30 years later, we haven't made enough progress on either point. I will say we probably made more progress in air service than we have in education. But it's a huge issue. I mean, I know of multiple businesses that would have relocated here or would have considered Chattanooga were it not for air service. I think the advent of the the way that the air travel industry is going and the aeronautics industry is going with the new, I think it's the Airbus 210 that's coming out, the smaller regional jets that are sort of like, or the Embraer 175, those favor Chattanooga. And Terry Hart and the team over there has done a really great job, which was, I always thought was the opportunity, tapping into the North Georgia market to increase emplanements. But specifically, I talked to Terry about this. I think we need a direct to Denver. I think a direct to Denver would open up a lot of markets in the West to us and make us much more attractive. And I was surprised to learn in talking to Terry that other than the debt for the new parking deck going in, they don't have a lot of debt. So to me, the airport is one of our greatest strategic assets, and it's been underutilized for business development. So I look really forward to working with them to get more on the front foot and get more aggressive about air service in Chattanooga.
So you mentioned business expansion and the airport being vital to business expansion. As we as a chamber are really heavily involved in economic development and attracting new businesses to our area or expansion of existing businesses. So as mayor, what resources and incentives do you think the city should provide to support new job creation?
Well, as I say all the time, one of the books that I'm a big reader, and I think I was probably responsible for getting Charles Woods to read The New Geography of Jobs, which was a book that made a tremendous impact on me. And the thesis essentially is that, the nature of work is changing to favor larger metros. This, of course, was going into COVID, and it has, because the nature of work has become more creative and intellectual. So you see these beehives developing in larger metros, and Chattanooga's right on the bubble. And again, I think the first step is realizing that we're in a competition with cities like that, and we're losing. So the city has got to meet the market, is what it boils down to, and do what it takes in order to recruit business. Now, I'd like to think that it's similar to anybody that has employees out there knows that pay is not the number one reason that anybody takes a job. And similarly, I'd like to think that incentives are not the number one reason that a company chooses to relocate to a city. The intangibles are critically important. And particularly in this day and age, Chattanooga's got some fantastic intangibles, our natural setting, EPB, our fast internet. It's an extremely appealing city. And so, look, we can't be all things to all people, but I personally believe with the development of what's going on at VW, with Oak Ridge up the road, with Huntsville down the road, we have a particular opportunity in sustainability and in aerospace. And so I look forward to working with the chamber to really aggressively recruit those growing industries.
So pivoting from economic development to economic inclusion, the Chamber Foundation strategic plan is centered around a vision for an inclusive economy with collaborative leaders as part of the process we went through a couple of years ago.
I was part of that.
Yeah, I thought so. An economy where economic mobility is available to all. So what do you think the city's role should be in helping our business community and our community overall attain this vision? Or how can we partner with the city to advance this to action?
Well, I mean, again, equity to me is not a political issue. It's an economic issue, because we're talking about human beings and human capital. There's a reason that Chattanooga 2.0 lives at the chamber. And it's because we can't have a huge segment of our population frozen out. And again, as the analogy's been made before, you're either in the wagon or you're pulling the wagon, and we need as many people pulling the wagon as possible. So to me, and again, this begins with education. The city has got to, if not lead the charge, certainly be out front as a bully pulpit advocating to make Chattanooga the smartest city in the South, because we need folks to avail themselves of education. We need to expand early childhood development. There's plenty of things we can do around skilled trades education to support the initiatives that Chattanooga State's got going on, that the Hamilton County Schools have got going on. There are a number of ways in which we can collaborate with Dr. Johnson at Hamilton County Schools. I've learned from talking to him. They want the help. They need the help. They haven't had the help. And so, look, to me, schools in the city are city schools. And so, obviously, resources will be limited. But as much as anything, it's about coordination and will. So I look forward to doing that, because divided economies always fail, and they fail in a very, very ugly way. I don't care whether you're looking at, Rome or Paris in the French Revolution, or in Ferguson, Missouri. It doesn't work. We have to close the gaps between rich and poor and black and white in Chattanooga, not just for their benefit, but for everybody's benefit. So it's critically important that we take an aggressive stance around it.
So same topic, talking about minority business enterprises, and specifically on the topic of MBE certifications, procurement, and contracts with the city. How, as mayor, would you work to ensure that MBEs thrive in Chattanooga?
Well, I mean, the first step is, again, getting a mayor who understands business and who understands entrepreneurship. Again, as I like to say, it's one thing to be a fan of the NFL. It's another thing to know how to play football. And I know this world. It is my world, and I understand it inside and out. So the disparity study that was done a few years back is just laying there, basically gathering dust. And it starts with making sure that the city is filling those gaps with MBEs when and where possible, and making sure we develop that ecosystem of MBEs so that they have the opportunities to thrive in the wider marketplace. As I've said, this may have changed since the campaign began. I don't think it has, but we don't have a minority-owned heating and air contractor in Chattanooga that I'm aware of. I have plenty of friends in that business. I think there's some opportunity in the market. I mean, nobody wants, new entrants. I understand that, but we've got to grow wealth. And as we know, business development and entrepreneurship is how we grow wealth in the wider community. And a lot of times that's a lot. Look, I'm all for Tech Goes Home. That's a great program. I was a gig tank mentor. We need to do coding. We need to foster the businesses here that are in software and other things. But many, many times our small business community needs much more basic support. How to use QuickBooks, how to do marketing, how to do HR. They can't grow, they can't get loans because they can't produce a P&L or a balance sheet. And I think the city could help coordinate resources to do a much better job there.
So shifting to talent, talent's a big issue for the chamber. What do you think, or what can be done, in your opinion, to increase the number of young adults earning a thriving wage, which I think statistics show is $32,000 for a single adult?
Well, again, this goes back to the new geography of jobs. And if anybody is interested, you should definitely pick a copy of that book up and read it. It's compelling. But the thesis of it is, again, my last go around at the chamber, I was pretty lit up, having come back from Harvard's Young American Leaders program, from my conversations with a young woman who was who worked for Goldman Sachs, who had an office in Salt Lake City. And it hit me that, there are no venture capital investment banks in Chattanooga. We need capital in Chattanooga to make strategic investments. But the fellow that wrote New Geography of Jobs, Moretti, is Enrico Moretti's his name. His thesis was that if it's chicken and the egg with talent and capital, the chicken is talent. Talent's the key. And I think, look, again, back to the intangibles, Chattanooga has this fantastic, our quality of life is our stock and trade, from our outdoor assets to our arts community to the setting. And we've seen this post-COVID. If you could live anywhere, why wouldn't you live anywhere? Why wouldn't you live in a place with the best quality of life? And so, look, I think if we can target those folks, and we can, and the chamber's done some of this already, to attract talent to Chattanooga, people who are really talented could be living anywhere but choose to live here. If Moretti's right, and I think he is, the capital will follow the talent. And, and that creates a virtuous cycle of investment that will continue to leverage up and create some momentum for us, which we have sorely lacked.
So going from adults down to youths, 16 to 25, those who are not engaged in school or work, we call them opportunity youths. How do you propose that we could re-engage these opportunity youths?
Well, if it were simple, it would have already been done. But I think it gets back to instilling a sense of community and a sense of hope and a sense of purpose, particularly in those youth who don't see a possibility or a purpose in their lives right now. And, some of the simple things we can do is to get rec centers back open again. They haven't been open during COVID. They should have been open already in my mind. And in getting kids back, off the street in many cases, and into environments with, with a mentor that can help them and that can talk to. I mean, I know plenty of guys, I'm 53, my age, black and white, friends of mine who basically said a rec center saved their lives, kept them out of trouble, kept them in jail. So, that's the first step. And I think we have an opportunity to get public safety, to get the fire and police departments re-engaged with rec centers to help restore the trust gap between the police department in particular and our youth. It also goes back to school. It goes back to, helping the Hamilton County school system in innovative programming in ways so that we're not disproportionately, look, boys are struggling more than girls now. We know that. I mean, it's not a secret. And then they tend to be more of a problem in a public safety setting. So I think we need to be more creative and more innovative in the approach that we take to this problem. And I look forward to working with, Dr. Johnson, coordinating resources from the city to do just that.
So you mentioned Dr. Johnson, good segue. He is, of course, the superintendent of the Hamilton County Department of Education. Chattanooga obviously is a municipality within the county, as are several other municipalities. In what ways would you propose working with or cooperating with the county commission and Hamilton County Mayor Coppinger if you become mayor?
Well, I have a great relationship with Mayor Coppinger, and we've met a few times to just talk about general things. And again, I have no future political ambitions, and I'm a fiercely nonpartisan guy. So I'll be able to work with Jim and the folks on the county commission, as well as I can with the feds in DC, and that includes our state commission in Nashville, our state delegation rather. Again, I'm never going to put personal or political, God forbid, ambitions in front of what's best for Chattanooga and Chattanoogan. So I look really forward. I mean, one of the things that excites me most about this opportunity is how much progress we can make in really short order, working with the county, not against the county, to achieve the synergies, right? I hear a lot about metro government and talking to people around the city, around the race. We can, and that's a completely different debate. And maybe it's one of your questions later. I hope not, but we can achieve, I think, the same benefits, nearly the same benefits, just with a healthy working relationship between the city and the county. And if you look back to, Claude Ramsey and Bob Corker, and those sort of partnerships, that's when this area has done the best. And again, it's when you put egos aside and act in the best interest of the entire region. And that's precisely what I would do.
So downtown development is a big driver in our community. What would be your number one downtown development priority should you be elected?
Well, that's interesting. I think we've seen some real distortions in the market from the Opportunity Zone federal tax program, which in many ways is, I think for those that understand, it's wildly attractive, right? Because it gives you a giant tax break on carried over capital gains in certain investment. But I think it's caused some speculative investment downtown that might not work out. I mean, we're seeing, hopefully with the shortage in housing, we'll catch up there. But I think the biggest issue there is maintaining, particularly with the shortage in housing supply now, we've got to get back on the front foot and grow the supply of housing significantly across Chattanooga, more so than just downtown. But in the ex-urban areas right around downtown, we got a real problem with affordable housing, which then bleeds right into a problem with homelessness. And so we're gonna, I would split the departments of economic development and community development at the city. I think they're two different animals that are, kind of first cousins, and put somebody at community development who really understands these issues. I'm a big fan of community land trusts. I think we can do a lot with affordable housing around that. I'm happy to dive into that concept to any depth or degree that anybody wants. But I think it's, my staff kind of gives me grief about talking about Goldilocks problems all the time. But this is why I think the next mayor of Chattanooga is so important. We are going to be dealing with a lot of complicated and delicate management problems. There are no simple issues here. So it's going to be a function of getting it just right with exactly the right policy and exactly the right management. And I know I'm good at that. So
Walnut Street Bridge, any plans on repainting or refurbishing the Walnut Street Bridge?
Hadn't thought of that. I mean, the planking could sure use some work. I go across it quite often with my wife walking the dogs, and sometimes run my bike across it too. and the decking's rotting, and I mean, I think the superstructure looks great, but I'd like to see that the water pools up in the middle of it, and arguably thanks to Garnet Chapin, I mean, to think about how close we came to blowing that up just goes to show you how it's so simple to look at people with vision in retrospect and go, oh, well, of course, right? But it was not obvious at the time that that was a great thing to do. Thank God for Garnet for standing up and making sure that was preserved, because it's arguably Chattanooga's crown jewel. So I would say, yeah, we need to look at reworking the decking going across, because it's in terrible shape.
So we've talked a little bit about education. Let's specifically focus on early childhood education. Do you have any strategies or priorities to increase opportunities with early childhood education?
Absolutely. And thanks for that, because as I said, I went to graduate school late in life, and it was really there. I had a very influential professor who was a psychiatrist who taught in the medical school, but also taught organizational management in the business school. And I won the organizational management award. I thought I was good at it going in, and I proved I was good at it coming out. But he was so compelling around early childhood. He just sort of said, the world's gone crazy if it doesn't realize the absolute primacy of early childhood education, right? I mean, the first investments in education are absolutely the most important, because very simply, a child's brain is very plastic until 5 or 6, at which point, the wiring is baked in, and that child is on a path that he or she is going to be on for the rest of their lives. And we spend all this time at Chattanooga 2.0. I was on the steering committee there, and in a lot of meetings. And there's so much anxiety about getting kids to 3rd grade reading level by 3rd grade, because that's the KPI as to how they're going to do for the rest of their lives. Well, we got 40% of kids in this area coming into kindergarten knowing their letters and their numbers and their colors. Less than half. And that to me is a huge crisis and a huge opportunity. And Mayor Burke got us to 1,000 seats, which is great, but we've got to really quadruple that number over the course of my term. That would be my goal. And the Biden administration looks to be very helpful around Head Start expansion, so we'd be taking advantage of that. And and the federal aid that's coming down is also going to be eligible for some of this. So our goal is to add 1,200 seats, to double the number of seats that we got to under Burke in my first year, because it's that important. And again, it's important for human development. It's the number one thing the city can do to help the county in K through 12. It's also hugely important for getting people back in the labor force, right? Labor force participation for the policy wonks out there has taken a nosedive, because there are a lot of women who are stuck at home because they can't get a lot of childcare places have dried up and blown away, and those are small businesses. I think we had about 160 going into the COVID crisis, and we came out with about 100, so 50 or 60 have just dried up and gone away. So we need small business support to get them back open again and get kids back there so their moms can rejoin the labor force. So it is probably my number one strategic priority, because again, having no future political ambitions, having spent 30 years in the nonprofit world, I am 100% convinced that it's the one thing we could change that would have the most downstream benefit, and for the city and the entire region. And no, it won't pay off in my term in office, and probably maybe not even my lifetime, but it's the right thing to do, and it's the single most important thing we can do.
So Chattanooga has its own Department of Transportation. I've seen you on TV. I think you're focused a little bit on transportation, but tell us what, in terms of transportation funding or projects, what would be your main transportation priority if you were elected?
Well, some folks know I exited the Subaru business at the end of last year, and that had less to do with this race, more to do with a strategic decision around the future of transportation, which I think we are on the cusp of seeing some radical changes around. And I think that's a great opportunity for Chattanooga in a number of ways. I applaud the establishment of a Department of Transportation, and I think it's important because we have this opportunity to really be strategic in the way that we design and manage our grid, That said, this one is a reboot for me. I think I got a lot of complaints for developers around the Department of Transportation not being responsive and holding up a lot of projects on stuff that really has nothing to do with transportation at all. So we would be looking to reconfigure that with Public Works. And not exactly sure how they would work together or who's managing what, but it's a very high priority for us to make sure that it's not an obstacle for development and just business. I mean, I've got my brother-in-law has been trying to get a restaurant open over in North Chattanooga, and he waited a year for a building permit, and that is unacceptable. So there's some things that have to change there.
So having been involved in the chamber in the past, you understand pretty well our role with respect to economic development in Chattanooga. But if you were to become mayor, what advice would you give to the chamber on how best to help you succeed in your new role?
I mean, I would turn the tables and say, I would become, I imagine you probably heard something similar from Ms. White, although I think I'd be better at it than she would. I mean, I would consider myself the chief recruiter and salesperson for the chamber. I know that hasn't always been the case. And so, if you've got a prospect that you need me to go talk to in another city, I'll be on the plane the next day or that night. If there's a visit, if they're here visiting, I want to make city resources available to help the chamber achieve our goals. They are, in fact, our goals, right? So it goes back to having an integrative approach to this and understanding that we are all on the same team and that we want the same thing. So I would say it's just the opposite. How can we help you?
Well, the good thing is I don't have to answer questions during this. I'm the questioner.
Yes, right. Well, that's for later. Yeah.
So last one is a bit of a softball. Tell our members, you've been doing this a lot. You've had several debates and you've been out for a long time campaigning. But tell our members as election day nears, why should they vote for you for mayor of Chattanooga?
Well, thank you, Justin. Well, look, I love Chattanooga. I have no other interest in doing this other than to fix it. I was listening to an Andrew Yang podcast, whatever your politics are. He's an interesting guy. He is in many ways a textbook entrepreneur, and I think I am too. I've started multiple businesses in Chattanooga from scratch. Others I've taken from small and grown. I mean, took a little Honda motorcycle store and turned it into the largest Honda motorcycle dealership in the nation right here in Chattanooga. So again, I understand organizational management. I understand how to get things done. What is, and with a sense of urgency. And I have no other goal or ambition other than, and this gets back to the Andrew Yang thing. He said that the key thing that drives entrepreneurs crazy is wasted potential. And to me, Chattanooga really can be straight-faced the greatest city in America, all things considered. And we have that potential, but it is, we are far from achieving it. The good news is we can make tremendous progress. Through the course of the campaign, very frankly, I've learned there are a lot of really simple things we could be doing to get this thing turned around and moving in the right direction in very short order. And Chattanooga has an incredible opportunity that so few other cities have to actually fall up out of this pandemic and come out of it better than we went into it. But it is a management exercise. Again, the mayor is the CEO of the 9th largest employer in the region. And I've managed, hundreds, hired, trained, motivated, hundreds of employees, very large budgets of my own money. So I know how to do all that, and I have great respect for Ms. White, but I very frankly just think I've got a superior skill set for this job, and that's what it is. I'm auditioning for the job.
Well, candidate for Mayor Tim Kelly, thank you for being with us today. I want to remind those who are watching, early voting began on March 24th. Election day is April 13th. And so, sir, we thank you for being here. And if there's anything the chamber you can do for you, you let us know. But thank you so much for your time today.